Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the Go Get It podcast with Rob Butler. Today's guest is Nicole Vicano, the Vice President of Asset Management for Choice Properties. Nicole's grown up around the real estate space and property development, and it was a perfect springboard for her to move into the industry that she knows so well. She's going to join us and talk about the three most important things that she'd recommend someone in your situation think about if they want to pursue a career such as hers, or simply evolve their existing work opportunities. So with that, stick around and let's go get it.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Nicole, welcome to the Go Get It podcast. Excited to have you here today, and I think it's going to be fun to be able to talk to someone with as much experience as you have in the commercial real estate space. So you're unique because you grew up around it, but you've also, whether it's through osmosis, whether it's because you just love that part of the industry and sector, that you've been drawn to it over the last number of years. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the way we kick off every Go Get It podcast is, what is your first memory of us meeting, and what kind of era was it, and where might it have been?
Oh, of you and me meeting. It was in the early 2000s, and I'm pretty sure it was a costume party. I feel like you embraced costume parties. And I think it was a ski theme, an 80s ski theme. And it came with Natalie, and that's where we first met. You know, I think we were both two very young kids, probably not knowing what we wanted to do with our careers at that time. Yeah.
So I do remember, if it was Natalie involved, it would have been early on when we started hanging out together, which the 80s reference is funny because we would have done stuff like that all the time. In retrospect, it seems hilarious, but for whatever reason, whenever we were up in Collingwood, Ontario, it made sense to have some theme party associated with the particular night. So yeah, that does check out. And then from my perspective, it was certainly in London, Ontario. You and Natalie were living together, and I don't even know what it was. Was it another resident? Like, where you guys were?
Somewhere above like a store or another resident in the back of an alleyway, back parking lot. Totally sketchy if you think about it now, but it was something that we both loved at the time.
Well, I remember being, here's what I really remember. Because Natalie got to work at the market, I felt like that fridge was always stocked with the best food I'd ever had. And
always.
Yeah, and that was always a draw. So that sticks out in my head. But that would have been probably, like you said, early 2000s, right around graduation.
2003, 2004. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the Choice Properties, that's where you're at now. You've taken on different roles throughout your career, but in a similar industry and sector. So just for an audience that may not be as familiar with the commercial real estate space, can you walk us through a little bit about where you're at today, what your responsibilities look like, and then what that, I guess, evolution looked like coming out of university?
Yeah, for sure. So I oversee the retail portfolio at Choice Properties, and Choice Properties is Canada's largest publicly traded real estate investment trust. We own, we manage, we develop a diverse range of retail, industrial, and mixed-use properties across Canada. So being responsible for our retail portfolio, to just give you understanding of the size of it, it's 44 million square feet that spans over 569 properties. And they're majority anchored by a major grocery tenant. And what is an anchor tenant? I do realize that not everyone is in this field. So an anchor tenant is going to be the largest tenant on the property that really drives traffic to your site. And then we own other retail around that. And mainly necessity-based. So stores that sell essential goods that people need on a regular basis.
So thinking about, I mean, you talked about the square footage and the number of properties that you are responsible for, which sounds insane. So congratulations to you for having all that responsibility. But if I think about the Canadian landscape, what percentage of the population would be within 30 kilometers of something you're involved in. Like I'm thinking about down the street from here, like they're in any major center, right? You'd
Yeah,
be
if
relevant.
you map out our properties, we are pretty much in every, definitely every urban, suburban, and rural areas. We have properties in cities that I can't even pronounce or have never heard of before. And what's kind of interesting is every time I meet somebody in my personal life, and they always say, "Oh, I'm from a very small town in Ontario. You'll never know it." I always say, "Try me. I pretty much will know where it is." So
Yeah, and then when some of the anchor tenants, maybe we can't use brand names, but can I think restaurants or
I mean, we can use brand names. So our main anchor tenant is Loblaws at our property, and then you'll see other necessity-based retailers. We have Dollarama, PetSmart, those type of necessity-based, doctor offices, dental, and a lot of QSR. So QSRs, quick service restaurants. So you'll see McDonald's, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, all those type of quick service at our properties as well. We also have full service restaurants. So lots of retail. They're all unenclosed shopping centers. So not a typical shopping mall, but unenclosed, car-driven, car-oriented centers.
and when you describe it, I'm sure everybody listening can picture within 2 seconds what's nearest to them that would fit the mold,
Exactly.
as I can here in Calgary. So,
Yeah.
so knowing where you are right this moment in your career, maybe talk about coming out of university, like what drew you to either that industry, or was it just coincidental, even though you had some connections growing up in that space? What in your opinion, were some of the influencing factors?
Yeah. My family background is in development and construction. I want to say that had a little bit of influence. It actually didn't have a huge influence on me. I never dreamt or grew up setting a goal to work in retail real estate. After university, I happened to get a job in Toronto at a real estate company called Smart Centers. They used to be called First Pro Shopping Centers back then, but today everyone knows them as Smart Centers. And my main goal was I wanted to live in Toronto after university. I wanted to explore Toronto. So it wasn't so much about the career. It was more about being in the city. And I ended up in a development role. So it was also unenclosed shopping centers. It was Walmart at the time, Walmart coming to Canada and working on site plans and layouts of where the Walmart goes and working on approvals with cities to allow for a Walmart to be in the town. And that kind of kicked off my career. I never had a set plan of where I wanted to go with that. It wasn't until I was at a company called Ivanhoe Cambridge, and I was working on enclosed shopping malls. So these are very big shopping malls. We owned Vaughan Mills Mall. That could give you a sense
Massive.
of the mall. So 500,000 square feet up to 1 million square feet malls. And I was working for Ivanhoe Cambridge, where we were expanding and developing these malls, reconfiguring the space. At that time, there was a lot of Zellers that were vacant, and we had to figure out how to re-demise the space, put up walls, and bring new tenants in. And it included renovating the mall. And what I really learned from this was you had to keep the mall still operating, right? Tenants still needed to keep their stores open. Customers needed to work. And I was met with this, okay, we doing all this development. How does the mall actually operate? How do customers actually come into the doors? What do property managers care about? What does the signage have to look like? It was all these things that I got exposed to while being in development that really transitioned my career into asset management. And so I guess I didn't touch on asset management. Maybe I should touch on that quickly, because that is what I do at Choice. So Asset management is one of those behind the scenes roles. We really touch everything from finance, leasing, construction, development, operations. And it's really why I love asset management. It's very strategic. It's very fast paced. You deal with a lot of people. It's a lot of relationship building, and you're constantly balancing short-term realities with trying to keep the long-term values and goals in mind. So it's a very unique place to be in the real estate world, I think, and that's why I love it. So I would say, so it kind of leads to one of my tips, Rob, for anyone listening to this podcast, that transition of going from development to asset management. And it's really knowing the details and digging into details that no one asked me for, because I learned later in my career how critical knowing the details are. These decisions that you make, they ripple through property's performance. And so my tips are a little bit focused on my field.
Which is perfect. You know what? And the beauty of it,
Yeah.
I mean, the Go Got It podcast, the format of it is for you to share the 3 most important things that influenced your career choice and helped you evolve your career and advance it. But the beauty of it is, because we get to interview people from multiple sectors, no two people have had the same experience. Now, there is some overlap, which is fun, and you can see some patterns in terms of what's important to somebody that's trying to kind of entertain and look for that next opportunity. Right. But that being said, it is specific to you. That's the beauty of it. So there's no right answer. It's literally whatever was the most important to you that you'd want to share. So on that note, and in no particular order, what's the first transitional piece then that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, the first thing is you can't manage what you don't know. Learn the asset, how a property works physically, financially, and operationally. Those days where I was expanding these malls, go in the mall, be a shopper, shop in it, go in the food court, eat there, see how the customers are moving around, talk to the janitors, talk to the property manager, and ask those questions. I think the more knowledge that you can earn early in your career, not only are you going to earn trust internally, but I think it sets you apart from those who are just looking at a spreadsheet every day. And you could have a role early in your career where you are an analyst on these spreadsheets. It doesn't mean that you can't dig into details and details that no one's asking you for, but to educate yourself.
Right.
And I really wish that I took the time to do more of that when I was younger in my career. Back when I had pre-kids, pre-home ownership, I think about all that time I had. Mm-hmm. And I honestly wish that I had the time today to continue to dig deeper on all those details that no one asked me for. It really enriches the quality of work that you do, and it inspires you to ask questions. That's kind of like my number one, like really get into those details, try to learn as much as you can, even if it's not your specific role. It's something that you're curious about.
I think it's a great point, and I'd feel similarly. The one thing I've always wished that I have had was a better either mentor or role model to literally tell me to go do that. And I know it's easy to say, well, I wish someone just told me to do it. I get it. However, when you're starting out in your career, and that's the point of this podcast, is for you to give them that concept or the idea or the motivation to want to go do that. So it is almost like a mentorship tip that I think is really important, no matter what industry you're going into. I know you suggested walking through the mall, working with a security guard, purchasing something and experiencing that. It's probably transferable to multiple different industries, to just learn and absorb and be a sponge, to wrap your head around the experience, regardless of at what level or in what way, but that you have a holistic view of whatever it is that you're doing research on and you're moving into. So, no, I think that's a great starting point. So then you feel like you've accumulated that, you know enough to know that today. What's the second most important tip you'd encourage somebody to be thinking about?
Really ties in to the first one. And how are you going to dig deeper into all that knowledge? And it's really about being curious. success isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. Even in meetings today, I would rather someone speak up and ask a question that could be completely off topic or off field than staying silent. So being curious, when you get it, and I'm going to keep it specific to my industry, when you get a lease deal, don't just review the rent. Ask, why does that rent work? What was the alternatives? What's happening in the market? It's really being curious, asking all those questions, seeing the fuller picture, and understanding, okay, this decision today, what is the long-term impact of, if we're talking about a lease, of that lease that's going to happen on the site. I think the best asset managers are not just reactive, but they can really connect the dots between details and strategy. And to be able to do that, it's going to be being curious and asking tons of questions.
So do you think the question part, you're coaching people now to encourage them to do that, but is that innate? Is that a comfort thing? Are there insecurities where people are reluctant to ask a question? What's your experience with that?
It's definitely a comfort level. I would say to younger people, no one knows how to do this job. Okay. Like when you start out, it's not like you know how to do it and you go in. You're really in here and you're learning as you go. And typically even today, when I interview someone, sometimes I put aside their resume. I'm not looking at what school they went to, what mark that they have. I am seeing how can they hold a conversation? How can they present themselves? What is their critical thinking? Are they asking smart questions? And those are the skills that you really need in asset management. If you see a building that has water pouring through it, it's like, okay, let's follow that water. Okay, there's a pipe. Where does the pipe go? Just logic. So it's really just, having those street smarts a little bit.
I think that asking questions, even when you're client facing, being able to have a proper thought process in terms of what you're trying to accumulate question-wise, answer-wise, to get a much better feel for whatever it is that you're doing. I think it's just a great skill set to have across. I guess similarly, I think it's transferable to almost any business that you might be looking at. So,
and I get that it's not easy to do. I mean, I definitely did not have the courage that I do today. When I was younger, I would be afraid to ask those questions to, if I wasn't looking smart or I should have already known that answer. And I think you just have to get very comfortable not knowing and also working for a company that is going to encourage and make you feel like it's okay to ask all those questions. I think it's very important.
Well, that's a cultural thing, and you're right. I think a lot of people go through that. Maybe for an entrepreneur, it matters less. But if you're working in a big corporation, being adaptive, being humble, and being able to ask questions in a safe environment, let's call it, I think there's something to be said for that. So there's definitely something to be aware of as you're entering, not just hiring somebody, but if you're looking to get hired, you want to make sure that fit's going to be the right setting and the right feel for you. Okay, so those are both great points. And then to round it all out, what's number 3 look like?
Okay, number 3. I'm going to say it's specific to asset management, but it is actually has to be specific to many, many fields. And it is relationships and building those relationships. But I'm going to add a little spin on it. It's invest in them early. So those relationships that you build when you're a junior, that will really shape the opportunities you get later on. I have a few examples of relationships, and it really goes back to school. When I was in my undergrad, I was in a very specialized program at Western called Urban Development. And there was not many students in there. So we were all very close. We were all, studied together. And that was, 20 plus years ago. Today, all those individuals who I went to school with are working at some of the largest real estate companies in Canada, brokerage firms, law firms. And it's so easy to pick up the phone and call them because you spent those late nights studying together, working on projects and really building those relationships. And I did the same thing in my MBA. I did an MBA at Schulich, working in teams. As you know, Rob, I know you did MBA as well. It was so much teamwork. And today I can still, that was, 15 years ago, I could still call up any of those individuals I was with, and I see them around in the industry. So I think it's really important to make those relationships early on. Get involved in clubs at your school. Don't just go to school and do the school work, but get involved in clubs and committees. And I think, that should continue to be the course when you're in your field and working as well. Not just having relationships internally, but you can build external relationships by joining organizations in your field, not just joining them and showing up to the talks or the events, but actually getting on a committee. Because when you're on a committee, you're going to be working with individuals on goals, on tasks to get things done. And, it may be fundraising, or it may be organizing a golf tournament. And you're going to say, well, how does that relate to your job? Well, it's cooperation, it's budgeting, it's presenting, it's speaking, it's all those soft skills. And when you make those connections, they're going to remember how you showed up. So when there is a job that maybe is in the field, they say, hey, actually, she did such a great job on that golf tournament, right? Let's give her a call.
On that third point, I've got a comment and then a question. The comment would be, even though whether it's any major city, Toronto in this case, you think that there's such a broad network that you don't necessarily run into the same people. But what I've found over the last number of years is it's depending on the sector that you land in, there's only so many people in that sector. And inevitably, you do cross paths with many of them. So one comment somebody made on an earlier podcast was don't burn any bridges. And I think it's part of this where, the relationship piece, very important, but try not to burn any bridges along the way, because it's amazing how many people pop up in whatever sector or industry you end up tying yourself to. So Toronto, if you don't live there, it might seem big, but it's amazing. Once you've been in a career for a number of years, you do start to build out that network to the point where not that you know everybody, but you're probably 1 or 2 phone calls away from knowing everybody.
For sure. And you also, you may work with someone early in your career, and then, 10 years down the road, you end up at the same company together and you're working again. Or in my instance, I'm at Choice Properties, and we have a bunch of JV properties with Smart Centers. So here I am now, working with Smart Centers, on properties where I was the junior on those properties years ago when I was at Smart Center. So it's quite interesting.
I think that happens time and again. So very important to look out 10, 15, 20 years, especially if you're coming out of school, because that will inevitably happen if you're successful in your career choice. Yeah. And then the question I had for you is, when you talk about building out relationships and networking, it has to be, this is a leading question, but it has to feel so much different today as a student than it would have when we were there. Like, honestly, I'm not trying to date myself, but I think I was just maybe getting some version of a cell phone in my 3rd or 4th year of school. Like, how does it look and feel today, do you think? And there's no right answer. I'm just curious, versus what it might have been when we were there. And we literally had to walk to somebody's house or pick up a landline and hope that you get the roommate to answer the phone call.
Yeah. I think about it now, and I don't know if students still do this, but when I went to university, I really treated it as a job where I would show up at 9 a.m., even if I had a class or not. I would stay there all day to 5 p.m. So I was either in a class, or if I wasn't in the class, I was in the library or doing a group project. And I wonder how much of that has gone away with technology, because you can, take online courses. I'm sure you can have meetings virtually. How much of that exists today at school? And I could say treating it as a job of being at the campus from 9 to 5 was probably the best thing I could have done. I'll tell you a couple of things. I didn't have to do so much work on the weekends or in the evenings, because I spend all day on campus. So a little bit of a plus there, but you are also just immersed yourself with other people and seeing other people and hearing from them.
I think that's a great tip. So I know it's that's an additional bonus tip you just gave. And I think it's very valuable. And you and I talked about this briefly last summer, but one of the things that surprises me and disappoints me is that a lot of the younger people coming into our current role, like in terms of business, I actually think it's easier today to stand out, because so many people want to do the work from home rhythm, where just showing up a little earlier than everybody else, staying a little longer, being a little louder on the phone, making, small talk or chit chat with those that are more senior than you. It seems like trivial stuff, but I promise you, anybody that's getting their foot in the door for the first time, just go that extra little mile. And it's amazing how I actually think it's easier to stand out now than it would have been when we were starting.
100%. And when you're younger, and I said this earlier in our talk, you have the time to do it. I would kill now to be able to, come into the office at very early in the morning. But unfortunately, I got to get my kids to school and my daughter to school. And so, it's, spend that time that you can to get in the office and have those coffee chats. I think that's also very important. I know I'm giving another tip, but pick up a phone, and not just pick up a phone, but go and have lunch with someone every day. Have a coffee with somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. All these bonus tips. The thing is, I could probably do this call for another hour, because I think you've got, and maybe we will. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2. But for today's purposes, you've been a wonderful guest. You've shared some really, I think, useful tools that people are going to be able to apply as soon as they buy into it. So, Nicole, thanks very much for joining the Go Get It podcast. And
you're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. It was fantastic. Thank you, Rob.
Let's go!
Hey, this is Rob Butler on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening to what it is we can bring to your career evolution. And if you liked our guest, feel free to 1, follow us, and 2, put a question in the reel, and hopefully our interviewee can respond to that question directly. With that, I'd like to encourage you to join us on next week's edition on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks again.